Global trade, it sounds so complicated, right? You hear all about these high-stakes negotiations, geopolitical chess, and deals worth billions and billions of dollars. But what if the whole grand spectacle is actually built on something much, much simpler, something we all understand? Let's get into it. So, on one side, you see the headlines about these massive economy shaping mega disputes. And on the other, you've got kids in a playground. This image really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today, the huge gap between the official story and the satirical reality. Okay, let's just put a number on the table to get started. $735 billion. That's the combined value of all the stuff the US and China slapped tariffs on during their trade war. It's a number so big, it's almost meaningless. So let's immediately reframe it. What if all of that huge, mind-boggling number, is really just about a game of marbles? What if the basic human drivers are no different from kids haggling over trinkets in the schoolyard? All right, so for our first part, we're going to decode the official story. We're going to peel back the layers of diplomatic language and see what's actually happening on this billion-dollar playground. So here's that number again, just broken down for you. You've got $550 billion in tariffs on Chinese goods, $185 billion on US goods. I mean, this is the biggest bilateral trade fight in modern history. The scale is absolutely historic. But the psychology behind it? Maybe not so much. And this is where we get to our first big idea, what we're calling the blue marble principle. You strip away all that jargon, strategic concessions, frameworks, and what do you really get? A super simple, almost childish exchange. Hey, you give me your blue marble, and I'll give you half my candy. Maybe. Subject to availability, of course. Okay, so what about the tactics? How do you actually play this game? Well, it's not just about what you trade, it's about how you tell the story. And for that, we have the Tom Sawyer strategy, how to win by basically not doing any of the work. Just look at this. On the left, that's what we hear in the news, right? High-stakes negotiations, strategic concessions, sounds super important. But the reality, the stuff on the right, it's way more human. I want your stuff. I can't afford to look weak. And my favorite, hey, let's just slap a nice label on it and call it mutual benefit. It's less about economics and way more about saving face. And this is the Tom Sawyer strategy in a nutshell. Remember the story? Tom gets his friends to pay him for the privilege of painting his fence. It's genius. In trade talks, it's the same thing. One side does something tough they probably had to do anyway, and the other side spins it as a huge concession they won. Poof, both sides get to go home and tell everyone they're the winner. It's all about controlling the narrative. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is just a thing in our crazy 24/7 news cycle world. But nope. This whole song and dance is as old as trade itself. The things they're trading change, sure, but the way they argue about it, that's been pretty consistent for a long, long time. I mean, just look at how this plays out through history. We go from the Bronze Age, hey, 2 goats for river access, not bad, all the way to the digital age. The language just gets fancier. The Spice Age adds more adjectives. The Industrial Age calls it strategic. And now in the digital age, nobody can really explain it, but everyone swears it's totally different this time. But is it really? The props just get bigger. It's funny. Just imagine if we covered these things like a live sports match. Day 47 of the negotiations, still scoreless, but morale remains high. We only get the official press release, which always talks about a constructive atmosphere. But in reality, it's probably just a lot of stalling with everyone digging in their heels. And here's the kicker. These games often aren't designed to end. I mean, just look at these. The Canada-US lumber dispute, it's been going on since 1982, over 40 years. And Boeing versus Airbus, 17 years before they finally hit pause. And notice I said pause, not over. Sometimes the real goal isn't to win the game, it's just to keep playing. So, if they're not always trying to make a deal, what are all these delegates actually doing in those fancy conference rooms all day? Well, that brings us to the hidden rituals of the whole process. Okay, get this. What if the entire environment is designed to prevent a decision? We're calling it the menu of non-alignment. The theory is that even the food is chosen to keep things in this perfect state of limbo. Nothing tastes too much like victory, nothing feels like surrender, it's all just perfectly, frustratingly balanced. And this gives you a peek into what that day might actually look like. You start with a memo, avoid specifics. Then you spend hours in a session underlining a sentence that you know is just going to be deleted later. Lunch is the only time anyone's honest, and even then, it's off the record. And you end the day with this profound thought. We gave nothing. We got nothing. We preserved everything. Mission accomplished, right? And that really sums it up, doesn't it? The real job of a delegate isn't to make a deal. It's to make sure the whole thing doesn't fall apart, at least not today. Okay, so after all that, all the posturing, the endless meetings, the carefully bland food, what actually happens when a deal does get made? What's in the final tally? So let's take a look at a real one from 2023 between India and the US. After sorting out a bunch of long-running disputes, here's what the trade looked like. The US gives market access for steel and aluminum. In return, India drops duties on chickpeas, lentils, and apples. It seems almost random, right? Like a bag of mismatched trinkets you'd trade on the playground? And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. It really is kids trading marbles. The only difference is now, the marbles have entire GDPs attached to them, and the candy comes with a whole lot of footnotes. Because at the end of the day, there's one golden rule that you just can't break. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has to walk away believing they got the better marble. The story of the win is just as important, if not more important, than what's actually in the deal. So, the next time you see that big handshake on the news, the flags, the smiles, what are you really seeing? Is it a landmark, historic agreement that will change the world? Or is it just the end of a very, very long lunch?